During pregnancy, one of the biggest complaints that we hear is lower back pain, and it can show up in a number of ways. We live our whole lives in a really asymmetrical way, walking, moving in any way, shifting, twisting, turning, walking upstairs. All of our lives are spent not standing perfectly symmetrically. So because of that, because of the additional relaxin that's released that allows for joints to open up and allows baby to pass through, that happens before that's actually needed. And so sometimes low back pain can show up as either a dull ache in kind of the center of the low back, or it can be more one-sided because of pain or kind of wonkiness in your sacroiliac joints, either on the right side or the left side. Regardless, the sequence will be helpful for low back pain and hopefully alleviate some of that discomfort. You'll need a block for the sequence, and this next pose that we'll do was one that I spent a lot of the last part of my pregnancy with both my daughter and my son in. You can place the block toward the top of your mat, make your way up onto your hands and your knees, and then place the block directly underneath your forehead. From there, lower down to your forearms. You can rest your forehead on the block. Move your knees back so that they're underneath your hips. Just let the weight of your head sink into the block. You can always sway your hips from side to side. One thing to just be mindful of is not allowing your belly to take over and drop toward the ground. So really elongate through your lower back. Lengthen your tailbone toward the space behind you. Take a big full breath into the back plane of your body as you're here. Stay here as long as you want. It's a really good place to just rest and take some breaths, take some weight off of your low back and off of your pelvis. So it's really nice also for the third trimester. And then when you're ready, you can place your hands under your shoulders, press up into a tabletop position. If your wrists are feeling tired, you don't have to be in tabletop. You can always lower down onto your forearms again. Just stretch one leg back at a time. Pulse a few times through one heel, keeping a real stable low back as you do that. Lower your right knee to the floor and pulse back a few times through your left foot. And then lower your left knee down to the ground. You can move your block off to the side, but we'll need it again in a moment. Place your hands about the distance of your mat apart. Tuck your toes under and lift yourself up into a downward facing dog. All of these poses are optional, so if downward facing dog doesn't feel good to you, don't do it. Make sure your low back is fairly long here. So if you tend to round in your low back, then bend your knees. Give yourself a lot of space in your low back. Take your feet as wide apart as you need to create space for your baby and for your belly. And hang out here for a few rounds of breath. And you might pedal your heels one at a time just to find a little more space in the hamstrings. The back of the legs and the low back, and tightness in both of them are really closely connected to one another. And then when you're ready, you can lower your knees down to the ground. Find your block again and place it just toward the middle of your mat, maybe at the lowest height. And here it might be helpful to have not just one block, but two blocks. You might need a little bit more lift. I'm just gonna have a seat on the one block that I have here. And I'll place my feet in front of me to come into a supported squat. You can also use a bolster for this, or several pillows stacked one on top of the other. And for this position, for this squat, sometimes we go really low and we'll bring the elbows into the inner thighs and inner knees. You can do that certainly, or you can also just rest your elbows on top of your knees. And press down through the four corners of both of your feet. Allow your pelvis to be heavy on your blocks. You just let the weight of your pelvis sink down. And then feel your sternum lift upward. Feel the crown of your head rise up. You can be here for as many breaths as you'd like. And this might be where you finish. If you don't feel comfortable on your back, you might stay here for a few rounds of breath. You might also take the block and bring it to your low back up against the wall and stand and just massage your low back with your block. If you are comfortable in your back, you can come off of the squat, take your block, scooch forward on your mat a little bit, and bring your block down by your side as you lower down onto your back. Come onto your forearms on your back, press your feet into the floor, As you press your feet into the floor, start to lift your hips. Your block can slide underneath your low back. I'm putting it at the lowest height. It can be at the lowest height, at the middle height, or even at the highest height if that's comfortable. Some place where you're able to rest your sacrum, very lowest part of your back, on your block. Let your arms come out by your side. Close your eyes. Just totally surrender the weight of your pelvis and your low back to the support of the block underneath you for the supported bridge pose. You can find a gentle swaying of your knees from side to side if you'd like. If this feels good, it's a great place to rest for several rounds of breath for a few moments. When you're ready to come out, press really actively into both feet. Lift your hips and your sacrum off of your block, slide it out from underneath you, and lower back down onto your belly, or not your belly,